بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل ربي زدني علما. قال الإمام النووي رحمه الله تبارك وتعالى ونفعنا بعلومه في الدارين. قال وعن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال قدم عيين بن حصن فنزل على ابن أخيه الحر بن قيس وكان من النفر الذين يدنيهم عمر رضي الله عنه وكان القراء أصحاب مجلس عمر ومشاورته كهولا كانوا أو شبانا. فقال عيينة لابن أخيه يا ابن أخي لك وجه عند هذا الأمير فاستأذن لي عليه فاستأذن له فأذن له عمر رضي الله عنه. فلما دخل عليه قال هي يا ابن الخطاب فوالله لا تعطينا الجزل ولا تحكم بيننا بالعدل. فغضب عمر رضي الله عنه حتى هم أن يوقع به. قال له الحر يا أمير المؤمنين إن الله تعالى قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خذ العفو وأمر بالعرف وعارض عن الجاهلين وإن هذا من الجاهلين. والله ما جاوزها عمر حين تلاها عليه وكان وقافا عند كتاب الله تعالى. رواه البخاري. So continuing with the chapter of regarding giving the proper respect in regard to the ulama, the elders and the people of virtue and people of status. This is a very interesting, very amazing hadith. So Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that Uyayn ibn Hisn al-Fazari, he has a very colorful history, and this is a very brilliant shade of that colorful history of his. But before Islam, he was quite a vehement opponent to Islam, and he had many very magnificent stories about him and his people. And ultimately, he accepted Islam, but he remained a Bedouin chief. So he's one of the chieftains of the Bedu, and the Bedu are Bedu, and they have their own idiosyncrasies. And one of them would be that they would speak very directly without observing perhaps the etiquette. Actually, the whole hadith, the whole narrative here is kind of the antithesis of the chapter, but there is a connection, which we'll see inshallah. So anyway, so Ibn Hisn, he came to Medina Munawwara and he settled in with his cousin. His nephew, Ibn Akhi, Al-Hur ibn Qais. And Hur ibn Qais, though he was a younger fellow, وَكَانَ مِنَ النَّفْرِ الَّذِينَ يُدْنِيهِمْ عُمَرٌ. So this is where the connection is. So even though he was a youngster, so he was among the people that Umar radiallahu used to keep close to him. And as he mentions here that the Qurra, the reciters, now the Qurra has a different connotation in those days than it does now. Qurra, usually the people who recite the Quran very beautifully. Well, that is, of course, they are Qurra. But in those days, Qurra meant the ulama, the people who learn knowledge and would read books and read knowledge, and the ulama. Whether they were, and the people, the Qurra, the ulama, they were the companions of the majlis, of the gathering of Umar. He would keep these kind of people surrounding him. And they were the people who he would consult with, whether they were elder, middle-aged or elder, or they happened to be youngsters. But he would, and so this is actually the connection to the chapter, that Umar, even being Umar, the greatest of all Muslims after Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but yet he would keep these people around him, even though they would be perhaps even younger than him and less in position, but because of the fact they were ulama, so he would regard them and he would keep them closer and keep in consultation with them. So anyway, so Uyayna told his nephew, he said, look, you have a good face with this Amir. In other words, you're closely connected, networked with him. So I want you to take permission to let me, attend, and I have something to say to him. I want to meet him. So through you, I want you to facilitate that, in other words. Is it okay? So the next day, or shortly thereafter, so he did seek permission, and of course Umar was not one to refuse anybody. Actually, he would sleep under the tree, and anybody wanted to meet him. It's not like you had a VIP protocol and you had layers of security, and he was there available in any case. So Uyayna came, and in his Bedouin, being a Bedouin chieftain, so he addressed Umar radiallahu in a very sort of disrespectful way, but that's how they were. He ibn al-Khattab, hey, son of Khattab. He's addressing Umar radiallahu, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, probably the most mighty ruler that the world has ever seen in terms of expansiveness and authority and control. So he's addressing Umar like this: hey, son of Khattab, wallahi, you don't give us, generously, and you don't judge between us injustice. If there was anyone who was ever generous, and if there was anyone who established justice, it was Umar. Al-Faruq, they used to call him Al-Faruq, the one who would, differentiate between haqq and batil. So, obviously Umar also had a temper, and he was known for that, but his temper would not flare except for the right. So this fellow has really gotten out of line. So Umar radiallahu anhu, it instigated his temper, and he hamma and yuqiya bi. So perhaps he was thinking that I'll take this fellow and give him a lesson. So now Uyayna's nephew, he said to Umar, he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, look, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told his Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, khud al-af, catch hold of forgiveness. Catch. In other words, forgiveness is not something that's easy to do, particularly in a situation like this. So, you have to kind of catch it and control it. Forgiveness, wa'mud bil urf, and command towards righteousness and goodness and what is right. Wa'arid an al-jahilin, and turn away and don't be, concerned with the ignorant. In other words, when people are acting ignorant with you, just look the other way, basically. So he said, this is what Allah says. And he says, this, my uncle, is a jahilin. This is an ignorant fellow, so, leave him. And so, what he says now, very interestingly, he says, فَوَاللَّهِ مَا جَاوَزَهَا عُمَرْ حِينَ طَلَّهَا. And as soon as he said, now he's ready to, give this fellow, give him a lesson, but as soon as he hears this ayat from the Quran, he holds back. وَكَانَ وَقَّافًا عِنْدَ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. And he was, Umar was waqaf. I mean, he would stay, aloof from going beyond the injunctions of the Quran. Waqaf and he's standing still in front of the Book of Allah, basically meaning that he would never attempt, and he would stand, his ground, and never attempt to go over and cross the limits that Allah has laid down in his book. Tallaha. وَكَانَ وَقَافًا عِنْدَ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. So, what was the connection? The connection was that Umar used to keep the ulama around him, even if they were younger than him, but the respect for the people of ilm. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq and let us learn the lessons of these things, and save us from the character of the Bedouin chiefs also. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.